Hello and welcome to this first session on AWS EKS. Now, in this session, we will look at why we should use containers to run our software applications. We will also look at some of the main business reasons why people in the IT industry are adopting and running their applications as a container. So, if you have been working in the IT industry, you will know that people are moving their applications to containerizations. There are various reasons why people are doing that. In this particular session, we will look at some of the reasons why you should be moving your applications to containers, and some of the benefits that your containers provides over running your applications on bare machines or on servers. So the primary reason why companies are moving or leveraging containers is that they enable comprehensive packaging of the application and then distribution of the application across various platforms. All right. So, see, with today's market, people develop applications, they write coding and everything, and there might be a requirement where they want to deploy these applications across various platforms. It could be your machines or cloud or anywhere you want, right? So containers, they enable us to package up our application with everything that is needed to run that application, and then we can start distributing this application on any platform we want. That's one of the primary reasons why companies are adopting or leveraging to run their applications as containers. The other reason why companies are moving to containers is due to the workload portability. All right. So as the workloads are increasingly being deployed in diverse environments, customers need a way to distribute and deploy these application softwares across varied platforms. So depending on the workload, depending on the requirement, there are more and more applications that are being developed, and these application needs to be deployed across their infrastructure. So you have a workload that needs to be managed, so that way you can distribute and deploy these applications on any platform wherever you want. The lastly we have is the cost optimization, right? So any applications, any infrastructure we take, cost plays a very important role, right? So optimizing the cost, reducing the cost as much as possible. So we will look at how you can do your cost optimization by running your applications as containers, which will help you to reduce your AWS billing cost. So since we're talking about EKS is a service provided by AWS. So we will look at how we can optimize our EKS clusters to run these applications as a containers in the EKS, and that can help us to reduce the overall AWS billing cost. So these are some of the reasons why companies are leveraging to run their applications as containers. So let's look at each of these a little more in detail. So the first thing we are going to look at is packaging up your application inside a container machine, and how does it help, what does it do. All right, so that's basically what we're gonna look at. So essentially, in your containers, what happens is we will have an application image, a container image that we will be creating, and inside this container image we will be putting everything that is needed for our application to run. All right, so we'll have the code, the application code. You'll have dependencies that are needed for the application to run. You'll have binaries, libraries. So basically everything that you need for your application to run will be inside this container image. All right, so this will contain everything. So this will help you to decouple your application from the underlying infrastructure. So instead of uh, depending on the infrastructure itself, like let's say this application depends on Java or it depends on Python. So instead of depending on the infrastructure, making sure that the server where we are running this application uh, needs to have Java or needs to have Python, we will be putting that requirement inside this container image. So now you're not going to worry about what is there on the infrastructure, because this image will be providing everything for us. Then we don't need to provide any unnecessary installation manual to the ops team. All right, like let's say we are giving this application code to the ops team to deploy. Now you'll also need to give the instructions as to what are the dependencies, what are the binaries or libraries, or what are the prerequisites that are needed for this application to run. Now with your containers, we don't have to do that. We don't have to provide any instructions, because this image will contain everything for your application to run. Then very minimized dependency management burden. And then finally also allows you to create artifacts with a built-in version tool. All right, so you can create tags, you can maintain multiple versions of your image that you are creating. So each time you will build a new container image, you can add a metadata or a tag or a version to that image. So this means that your application can go through various releases. You will have a new container image, providing a clear version history for your workload. So all those things can be done when you are packaging up your application inside a container. Then you have your workload portability. So containers offer unparalleled workload portability. And how does it do this? It does this by enabling our applications to run consistently across diverse environments. How does it do this? It does this by enabling us to run our applications consistently across diverse environments. So, deploy your workloads across more and more places. It could be on the cloud, it could be on your physical data center, or in different regions. All those things can be done. So this will make sure that our applications are consistent no matter where we are running. And it also simplifies the deployment of this application across the workload types and environments. Because we have the container image, we just have to run that image on these various platforms, and that will make sure that the deployment looks the same, and it's also much simpler for us to deploy our application. So we can break down the applications into different services. So it could be a front end service, it could be a back end service, it could be your data processing service, or your machine learning service. And all of these services will operate consistently regardless of their deployment context. So no matter where we are deploying these services, all of these services will be inconsistent on any platform that we are running. And then finally, we have the cost optimization. So here, if you see, I have a diagram. Now, this is for the virtual machine. So, how do we deploy our application? So before containers came in, we had your virtual machines, and that is where we were deploying our applications on virtual machines. So with this, you will have your underlying infrastructure. On top of this infrastructure, we will have our host operating system, and then on top of this we will have our hypervisor. So any hypervisor tool you can install, which will enable you to create virtual machines. Now, depending on the applications that you want to run, for each of the applications you will be creating virtual operating systems. All right, so let's say you have an application that runs on the Windows machine, then you will create an operating system for the Windows machine, a virtual machine. Then you may have a virtual machine for Ubuntu, then for a Red Hat, then for a CentOS. So likewise, you'll end up with lots of virtual machines depending on the applications that you are running. So under this, each application that you want to run will be running in its own virtual operating system. All right, so we'll be creating this virtual operating systems using this hypervisor. So traditionally, these applications were deployed using virtual machines, and then you will be having one application per virtual machine. So if you had, like, let's say 30-40 applications, you'll end up with 30-40 virtual machines because you'll be having one application per virtual machine. This led to operational overhead. All right, because we had to keep packaging and we had to keep securing the operating systems, the overhead of managing all these things were too much. Now, to solve this, we have your containerizations. right? Now under containers, again, we will have your infrastructure, and then on top of this infrastructure, we will have your host operating system, and then in place of hypervisor, we will have a container runtime. So depending on the containerization that you are using, could be Kubernetes, Docker, OpenShift, ECS, EKS, whatever you are using, you will have a container runtime. And then we will be running the application. So we won't be creating any virtual machines here. Rather, we will be running the applications as a container on the same host operating system. So we can, this will allow us to run multiple applications on the same operating systems, and each of these applications are isolated within its own container, which will have its own dependencies, and this will allow for higher server density and utilization of the server. So with this, we will have the same operating system that will allow us to run multiple applications in the form of containers, and each application is isolated from each other. Each of these application will have their own set of dependencies. They will be having their own images. So the image will contain everything that is needed for the application to run. So this approach not only increases the application density, but it also reduces the overall operational overhead that is required to manage these environments. Now imagine you had virtual machines, so managing those virtual machines can be very daunting, right? Now with your containerizations, we don't have to do that. We don't have to do any operational overhead. All those things can be reduced, and we can start running your applications on the same operating system. So that way it will also help you to save your cost. All right, so one is packaging up your applications as a container image, so that the image contains everything needed for the application to run. And because of this package that we create, we can deploy the package on any platform we want. Then it provides us with workload portability, so we can manage our workload, we can deploy these applications on any platform we want, and it provides us with the consistency because the package contains everything needed for the application to run. And then lastly is your cost optimization. So instead of uh, running one application on one virtual machine, we can have all of our applications running on one machine, and then each of these applications are isolated from each other in the form of containers, and this each of this container will have everything needed for the application to run. So these are the main reasons why companies are adopting or leveraging containers to run their applications. That's all I have for this session. Thank you. Once again, before you leave, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And if you like the video, leave a like and please share the video.